I'm going to be sharing with you the one thing that I changed in my garden that increased my yields more than anything else I've done. But first, I wanted to take a second to remind you all that the work that I do here on the channel is not the only work that I do. I have a website with a huge collection of curated seeds, all of my favorite raised beds and vertical gardens. I have some fun garden t-shirts. By going to the website and checking out my classes and events and all of those other goodies, you help to support the work that I do at no extra cost to you. So let's get back to the topic of today. It's garden planning. Cue the eye rolling, heavy sighs, and plugging the fingers while singing songs like a little kid. I get it. Not everybody likes to garden plan, and it's that extra step, and all of my non-type A people are probably having like a near panic attack. But I cannot emphasize enough how much it can dramatically increase the amount of produce that you will get from your garden. Not only will you increase your yields, but you'll also usually reduce maintenance as well. So let's dive into the two things that I have found to be most effective when planning a garden. Okay, I say to make a garden plan, but I also want to make the point that not everybody's garden plan is going to look the same. If you're working on a small city lot or a larger homestead, if you're working in container gardens or raised bed gardens or in grounds, a garden plan is still going to be helpful to all of us. And that is because it can help us potentially prevent one of the biggest mistakes that I see beginner gardeners make, and that is overplanting. When we take the exact measurements of whatever or wherever we're growing and actually take the time to figure out how much space those plants need, we're going to prevent overcrowding. When we have overcrowding or overplanting, we're going to have reduced yields, we're going to have more pest and fungal issues, they're going to be competing for light and nutrients and water. It can create a huge impact on your overall harvests and yields. I know it can be really tempting. You get the 6-pack of cabbage and you only had room for 4, but you don't want to waste the other 2. So you just squeak them in and figure it'll be okay. Or you put in a pack of seeds and you decide, I don't want to thin, or you get busy and stuff doesn't happen. And then you have 10 times the plants that you need in that amount of space. If we actually take the time to get our exact measurements, plan out how much space those plants need, and actually stick to the plan, you will prevent the super, super common way that people kill their harvests. Now, how do we actually make a garden plan? Good question. The first step is to actually take the time to get exact measurements of your beds. I like to either put it onto graph paper or into a computer program. Each little square equaling 6 inches usually tends to be a good measure of how to go about laying out your plans. Most plants are going to fall within 6 inches, 12 inches, or 18-inch dimensions. So the 6-inch mark works really well. But be exact here. Don't eyeball it, don't guess. 6 inches could make or break the difference between a row of lettuce or a row of radishes. So make sure to be precise. Now, once you have your exact dimensions of your container or your raised bed or your growing area onto the paper or into the computer program, start filling in your plants. I personally like to start with my must-haves, or things that are specific and need a specific area of the garden. So something like, peas or beans next to a trellis, or perhaps making sure to put the tomatoes into the raised bed that you just cleared the sun hemp out of to help with nematodes. Put those in place first, and then start layering in all of the other things that would be nice to have, but you don't need to have. Once you lay them all out, you'll probably find you don't have as much space as you might have thought. Make sure to look up the dimensions that these plants actually need when they reach full-size maturity. Otherwise, you will end up with that overplanting issue and reduce your yields. I just released an online on-demand course on garden planning. We work through everything from creating a wish list to how to plug the plants into the garden while still maximizing your space for efficiency. We go through all of the details to get your garden plan fully into place. If you want more information on that, I will have that down in the show notes. The second unexpected way that a garden plan may actually help improve your yields is with succession planting. Now, succession planting can mean a lot of different things or be taken different ways. It could simply mean breaking up your 4 by 4 foot section attributed to lettuces and planting only a quarter of it at a time so that you have a more regular and consistent harvest over the season. But where garden planning really shines is helping you to realize seasonality and where those plants are within your garden space so that you can identify areas that aren't being planted the whole time. So let's take, for example, cabbage. Cabbage can't get planted for another 2 months. Of course, I have cabbage in my garden plan, but if I take the time to realize, hey, I have a vacant spot here. Let's put in something fast growing, like perhaps bush beans that really love this warm weather. Get in a nice crop of the bush beans and follow it immediately after with the cabbage. By doing so, I essentially put 2 plants in one space. And garden planning can really help us to realize where those gaps and spaces are. Another way to look at it is at the tail end of the season, perhaps. So if you know that, let's say you harvest your cabbages and they'll be done in 4 months' time, let's follow it up with something else behind it. So let's look at, growing out some cucumbers and some starter pots so that as soon as those cabbage are done, you're able to put in the next round of plants immediately after. When we have it on paper or on the computer, it really helps us to identify and track those changes so that we're able to increase our production and get more yields and harvests from our garden. So in that first example where we have that quadrant of lettuces, that's a little easier to conceptualize, right? We just break it up into 4 pieces and we remember when we're out there in the garden not to plant the whole thing at once. Maybe if you're forgetful like me, you set a reminder in your phone for 2 or 3 weeks out to plant that next quarter of your space. That is not too difficult to work through. But when we're trying to layer in the change of seasons on top of our garden plan, it gets a little complex. We're trying to take in information not only about the plant spacing, but also about the harvest length, how long it's going to take perhaps in a pot before it's ready to transplant. We're trying to layer in so many different pieces that it can get pretty overwhelming pretty quickly. That's why I've found that using an app-based garden planner really helped to change how efficiently I was able to plan my garden, because you're able to go through and move it to October, move it to November. It's literally going to show you in your garden where those spaces are so that you're easily able to identify and plug things in. Now, I've tried a lot of apps over the years because I have wanted that assistance in my garden planning because I am absolutely forgetful, but I also want to maximize my space to the best of my abilities. I did finally find an app, Seed Time, that is willing to work with me for things that I find really valuable. A lot of the other programs I was trying out were unwilling to have any sort of custom crops. And here in Florida, I grow a lot of weird things that wouldn't be in your standard issue garden app. And I also have issues with seasonality. If they are only basing things on frost date and we are subtropical and growing in our prime growing season over the winter months, a lot of the apps just won't allow me to do a proper garden plan. Seed Time is willing to work around both of those for me, and I have practiced using the app, laid everything out, and it absolutely helped me to pick out and find those gaps in the information. I am an affiliate with them, and they are going to be doing a garden planning class free of charge for everybody. So if you'd like to join us for that event, you can, or you can head on down below and sign up right away for the app. I have found it incredibly useful, and when you use my discount code, it will get you our custom crop list for here in Florida, which I'm super excited about. Now, do not feel like you have to do that. It fit me. I have a pretty complex garden. I'm really focused on efficiency and maximizing my production, but I've done paper planning for a good long time and it worked out just fine. I think the garden app just allowed me to take my basic garden plan and kind of one-up it. So if you're interested in that, head on down to the show notes and I'll have a link for you. If you are really looking to up your game in the garden and start producing a significant amount of food, I absolutely think garden planning is that first step in that process. It increases what you're able to plant, it increases the yields, and it ultimately makes less maintenance. It takes a little bit of time up front, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And you can also copy and paste from years previous. So put in the effort so you're ready to rock and roll as the new season comes around.